Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. We're thrilled to be coming to you live from the heart of Atlanta at Modex 2024, right here at the Georgia World Congress Center. A shout out to our sponsor, G&P Construction, your go-to provider for comprehensive turnkey material handling and solutions in both logistics and commercial needs. We are truly grateful for the support.
Change management is, I think, one of the hardest things we've seen in warehousing, in supply chain, in the space we live in. Until that bridge is burning or burnt to the ground, I'm not going to touch it.
Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation podcast followers. We are excited to be here with our friend Guy from Tecsys. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Our pleasure. Maybe as a way of getting started, could you give us a little introduction, your past history and your current role at Tecsys?
Sure, absolutely, Dan. And again, really appreciate being here. So real quick, I'm the Vice President of Industry and Global Alliances at a company called Tecsys. We're a Canadian-based supply chain software provider. But for me personally, I've been in this space now for 25 years. And I used to say 20 years, and then I did the math and I realized it's 25 years because I'm getting old. But during that time, I started out at Forrester Research back in the late 90s. And I'll tell you guys, it really influenced a lot of my career because as you guys remember, late 90s, .com boom, all kinds of craziness going on, people making money hand over fist for just putting a .com on whatever. I did get the chance to meet folks like Amazon, who at the time were just selling books and CDs.
Yeah, exactly.
How cute, right? Cute little company out of Seattle. So was at Forrester and then really got into supply chain after business school. I started at a company called i2 Technology that is now Blue Yonder. And that really made a big impact on me through the rest of my career until now. Have been in leadership roles at a number of other supply chain software companies, as well as having done a couple of stints again as an industry analyst covering supply chain. And now I'm back at Tecsys again, running global alliances and industry. So the space is in my blood. If you had asked an 8-year-old Guy, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
Supply chain probably wasn't in the top 20.
We're all with you, buddy.
I think we are all the same way. I think I've shared my story many times where first job I got, someone says, it was a recruiter, be like, hey, we are looking for a test lead for warehousing project. And I actually thought it was data warehousing. And so I go in, I interview. Even through the interview, there was no context to warehousing. I literally thought on my first day on the job that I was going to step into a business intelligence data warehousing project. And they called me into a physical warehouse, which is where the idea. Yeah, exactly.
Boxes.
I'm like, what
I'm in the wrong
place. That's literally how I fell into it. And I love it.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I love it. And I sort of got the bug for supply chain when at Forrester. And I realized, I was like, one of the big drawbacks of a lot of these .com startups was they would tell me they'd brief us and say, Guy, look at this. We got this great website and we're presenting all this great products and all these pictures and we can collect pricing and we can collect the money and this. And then all of a sudden oh, wait a minute, we got to ship it. Oh, that's actually really hard. I'll give you a funny story. There was one company that briefed us and I think they literally called themselves USA.com. They somehow got that URL. And I remember the only call I had with them, and we were talking about Amazon and how, Amazon's, they're not doing enough. They're just doing books and CDs. And these guys said, listen, we're going to ship anything from toilet paper to a John Deere tractor. And I remember sitting on that call being like, how big is your warehouse?
Yeah.
Seriously. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, shipping a roll of toilet paper and shipping a John Deere tractor, that's pretty
I agree.
Challenges on both sides, but what's going on here? And then the .com crashed. And then I remember, went to business school and I ended up at i2. And part of my motivation was like, man, I think at the end of the day, this fulfillment thing that no one really talks about is really what held back a lot of the .coms. And I think we're seeing that today because obviously, we keep talking about Amazon, but Amazon, to me, you look back, they weren't a .com company. They were a fulfillment company. Why did Jeff send books and CDs, when he shipped them? Why? Because if you didn't get your book, it wasn't the end of the world. If you didn't get, your medication, that's a big problem. So Why start by shipping prescription drugs? Start by shipping me a book. So if I don't get my Tom Clancy book, it comes a couple weeks late, I'm not happy. I still get it. It's not going to change my life that much. It's certainly not life threatening. And I think he learned from that. How do we ship these items that are very much same size, same shape? How do we build a logistics network and all this? So, that's really one of the lessons I took. So to your story about the warehouse. That was how I fell into it as well.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people outside the industry or even within the industry, the folks that actually work in just pallet in, pallet out operations or whatnot, there is a good realization of how different e-commerce fulfillment happens to be. I would say the delineation, people know how stores operate. They know how distribution centers operate. The difference between a store operation and distribution operation, I would say it's the same amount of gap between a distribution operation and a fulfillment operation.
Yes.
And how wildly different it is. And the early days, because all systems that I can speak to like WMSs, all of these systems were designed for that retail replenishment, or they were doing pallet in, pallet out operations, distribution, etc. What you would find is you use the same WMS operational strategies, which is put stuff in reserve, replen to active. You got a bunch of active locations, and from there you try and like pick, pack, and ship. And the big thing that Amazon was probably one of the first ones, at least at scale, but Amazon was the first one to say, wait, it's an e-commerce center. Everything goes everywhere in the entire facility. Harness the chaos.
Embrace the chaos.
Exactly. And use that pick strategy to drive throughput and productivity.
Yes.
That balance between the commitment of order processing time, because it's not like the olden days where, a purchase order for retail comes in and now you got like 2 weeks to send 2 trailers out for a given order, right? You can do all this planning. You got no planning here.
Yep.
The customer commitment has been made. You need to look at your cutoff, pick, pack, and ship. And your last window in a day might be 3 hours of order turn time for you to meet the commitment. And if you don't, you got to upgrade, and it's going to cost you money, and all your margins out of the game. I mean, it is so wildly different.
It is so wild. And it's interesting to your point. One of the lessons, and I still see this today, right, is where you see a lot of fulfillment and retailers who sequester inventory. So, this is my eCom inventory. This is my in-store inventory, or this is my inventory for B2B replan or what have you. And it's maddening to me because no, it's one source of inventory, and your customer, regardless if it's B2B or B2C, they're going to interact with you how she sees fit. So if I'm a medical distributor, I might go on your website. I might go on my phone. I might call you up. I might send you a fax, right? If us as consumers, look at how many ways we interact today with brands. And now the question is, if I'm a brand, if I'm a retailer, why am I bringing inventory and separating it? Because at the end of the day, I need to leverage that pool of inventory, to your point, because it's so complex already. Yep. If I add more complexity by splitting my inventory, now I'm just adding more problems. So I'll give you an interesting story. Back to the .com days, Amazon, right? They were all online. They're doing everything with DCs. We went to talk to Walmart. In Walmart, literally, we would go into one of their stores and they would point to a cage. That's our e-commerce inventory. And now I look back, I'm like, wait a minute, you've got inventory across the entire supercenter.
Right.
You're taking some off to put in this cage over here to fulfill e-com orders. So you're handling it at least 2 or 3 more times needed to, which is a cost, right? Because now you're sending labor out there to handle the inventory. You're putting it away in this cage. No, by the way, your system now has to track what's in the cage and also what's on the store floor, so that when Joe comes and orders something online, oh, it's an online order. I got to pick it from the cage. There might not be anything in the cage, but there's 15 items sitting on the store shelf. So now what do I do? Right. And this notion of separating the inventory. And I remember the madness of it, which was like, well, now I have to have 2 WMS systems or 2 order systems, or, my labor has to split it. And I still see some retailers today who employ that strategy. And I'm like, haven't we learned from the past 25 years that you have one source of inventory? You should manage it that way. And to your point, the systems and the processes in place already are complex. Why add more complexity if you don't have to?
I wholeheartedly agree, man. And I mean, to the point you were making about Walmart, the number I had heard when they were doing ship from store, when they started it, was close to $40 per order. That was the cost of both transportation and the labor that was put into actually doing the pick pack inside the store. I mean, there is not $40 in that basket of margin.
No.
They can do that to improve the processes and bring it down. But to the other point that you also made about the inventory segregation side of things, I think the challenge, the reason why some companies do that is they just don't have the right systems to do virtual segregation because you have these contractual needs, right?
True.
You might have a contractual need that might say, I have to, on consignment, provide to Amazon and a first P channel so much inventory when demand comes. Even though e-commerce shipping might be higher margin direct ship for me, I have to protect that just because I'm contractually required. This idea of like case management and unit management and how much inventory do you show on the site, right? At the end of the day, it's an equation of just show safety stock conditions or show X amount of inventory. That channel management of inventory segregation, I think a lot of companies just don't have the right tooling in place to be able to do that. They are being adopted, but that's where I feel the challenge happens to be. And in some cases, they are just in bad habits of saying, let's segregate all of it. And I know this one very large apparel retailer that completely splits their online inventory from their store inventory. Like complete separate warehouses, complete separate management of it. And it's the same products. The SKUs have different names, which are SKU IDs.
But do you think, let me ask you a question. Do you think, you mentioned, they don't have the systems, but before the systems, are they even aware, or do they have, to some degree, the backbone to make that change, right? Because one thing I've learned, especially in retail, is we've been doing this for 1,000 years. Don't tell me how to change.
Yeah, right.
It's like, well, someone's going to eat your lunch if you don't. I hate to go down this topic, but change management is, I think, one of the hardest things we've seen in warehousing, in supply chain, in the space we live in. And to your point, I think it's, well, until that bridge is burning or burnt to the ground, I'm not going to touch it.
Brother, I can't agree more with you on that front, because the amount of times we get to kind of go to a site, we look at something, and I'm sure from a Tecsys perspective, you see this every single implementation is you are doing a WMS implementation, and we don't even need to go all the way high up. Let's just talk warehouse operations. Everyone, no matter how custom you build your system so that it's configurable for the client, there's always going to be this nuance, like added customization, this weird workflow that needs to happen. And you're like, you don't need to do that. And everyone thinks they have a secret sauce.
Yes.
There is no secret sauce.
Right.
It's just ketchup, right? They'll be more than happy to pay you X $100,000 to build a modification on top of your system to do something that can natively be achieved through another way, but they just want to do it this way because we have been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
And that change management just isn't there. I do see a lot of like, hey, we are going to implement SAP standard. We are going to implement Tecsys standard. There are a lot of companies that are doing that. But then there is a lot of companies that are going, no, I'm going to take this thing and then like customize it to the way I run my business and add millions of dollars of customization on top of it. That from a systems change management couple of years later is even harder.
Even harder, because then the people that did that and retire, now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, he just left and he has all the native knowledge. Now what do I do? And the spaghetti is running my company and running my warehouse, and I dare not start pulling the spaghetti, because then who knows what you always hear the horror stories of like doing a renovation in your house and, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this. And you open the wall up and you're like, ooh, wait a minute. Like the wiring's not up to code. When I opened it, so now I know it. So now I got to change that. And now all of a sudden the dollar till keeps going and going and going. So you're absolutely right. I think there's I certainly see that where there's this notion of, hey, don't start pulling on the string. And you're right. I had JCPenney and Nordstrom as clients ages ago, and I don't know, we're so different from each other. No, you're not. You're both big box you're big department stores. You sell jeans. Yeah, one of you sells them at $30 and one sells it at $200, but it's denim sitting on shelves with price tags that you need to replan when you don't have enough. Like that. This is, but no. We're totally different. I'm JCPenney and we're totally different. Where do you ship from? Oh, you ship from China. Okay. You bring it over in a ship, then you bring it to the port of Los Angeles and you break bulk and then you ship it out. Okay. What's inside is different.
Yeah.
But the process is the same.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Nordstrom might have more garment on hanger than JCPenney as an example. I think they would have equal amounts actually, but you got some of those nuances. But other than that, I mean,
you're selling clothing.
Exactly. And there is retail standards already, how vendors are supposed to send you stuff. Right. There is already transportation standards on how you're supposed to be shipping stuff, right?
But it's a secret sauce.
Exactly. There is a secret sauce.
So Guy, maybe to change gears here for a second, you recently published an article, I think in Forbes, called The Healthcare Ground Game. So would love for you to share the thesis behind that article and we'll jump into that conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's something I've been thinking about for a while. We just published it recently and it's really looking at two industries really, but healthcare being a key one, healthcare and retail. And the thesis is basically, we just talked about Amazon and all this, a lot of companies, a lot of us sort of chase the shiny digital object, right? So how good is my website? How good is my order capture? How good is my inventory visibility on the website? How good is my digital strategy? And I'm not diminishing any of that. That's incredibly crucial. That's like the air game. But the ground game, which is not as sexy, is still, I think, as important as this other digital strategy. And the basic thesis was, if you're in healthcare, you're in retail, you need to think about the ground game from the perspective of, at the end of the day, inventory is a physical good. A physical good is constrained by physics. Therefore, the ground game is, how do I forward place or put inventory in such a location where I can efficiently address our needs as patients or as consumers, right? So that's really the premise. And one of the things we're seeing a lot in the hospital world is hospitals consolidating their inventory so that they can better fulfill into their hospital networks instead of relying on the Cardinals, doing it yourself.
Oh,
so, some of our customers out there, I can mention something like Intermountain Health, right? They're consolidating these centers. Why? Because they want to take control of that. Because the challenge they've seen with the Cardinals sometimes is, well, I'm bespoke to them. And what you said earlier is, well, they might have contracts with other people and I get pushed down the stack. Let me control my inventory. Let me control my fulfillment. Let me control when I have a patient coming in that I guarantee the replacement hip is going to be there on time and that everything I need for that surgery is going to be there and I control my inventory. It's the same thing in retail, right? When you think about retail and we talk about Amazon, what are they doing now? Their ground game is what? They're putting DCs everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? I worked for someone that was dipping in the e-commerce or was in the e-commerce world and dipping in fulfillment, and I won't mention their name, but their big thing is, hey, well, we've got 3 warehouses. I was like, 3 warehouses? There's 3 warehouses by my parents' house from Amazon. 3 warehouses? And you want to compete with these guys?
Oh, there is no competing with Amazon. I'm sorry. That's left to Walmart and the others, right?
I'm going to challenge you on this.
Yeah.
I'm going to challenge because I think there is competing on a local level.
Yeah.
Because if I look at some retailers, the ground game for them is, I've got a physical store. That physical store now is my forward placement DC to fulfill orders within a certain radius of that store.
Agreed.
So now I take advantage of that. If I'm a smaller retail, I mean, we look at Walmart, but yes, Walmart and Target are great examples of leveraging their physical stores to be able to fulfill orders closer to the customer. Hospitals are adopting that as well. And I think that's really important, which is, hey, I want to be smarter with my inventory. I want to order it more efficiently as a hospital network, but I also want to put it in the right place to fulfill the patient's need. Whether that's restocking at the hospital on a more regular basis, whether it's holding back inventory in a more centralized location and having the fulfillment capability to fulfill in a JIT manner. Those are all things that I think these networks need to think about when it comes to that ground game.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And when I said no competing with Amazon, I'm talking about their logistical network in general. Absolutely. I mean, that's hyper giants, right? Like someone called it it was actually Quite Logistics and American Eagle back in the days that actually mentioned it. They said the amount of inventory that they ship, Amazon ships in a day is what American Eagle ships in the entire year.
I'm not surprised.
Right? So, I mean, when you have that type of scale, you play a different game. But I do want to go down the healthcare side of the conversation. Specifically, you spoke about the consolidation. Is there some sort of emergence? Because we saw this with the CPG universe, which started getting into fulfillment. CPGs that are used to do in pallet out. I've had like 3 or 4 conversations just in the last 24 hours where you can see the likes of Unilever and Mars talking about doing e-commerce. What about healthcare? Where do you see that play going? Because they have their own set of rigid organizational challenges, right? Like because ISO 13485. So they might have this product line that's over the counter as an example, as a pharma. But then on the other side, their entire organization is designed around this GDP, GMP, GT, or all the G something standards, right?
Yep.
It becomes so much harder to do e-commerce for them because of that reason.
100%. But here's a little problem. Amazon. right? Amazon is getting more and more into that space. So let's break it down in a couple of layers. I think pharmacy will be sort of the last one because of all the regulations. And it's a good thing, right? I don't need to be getting drugs shipped to me, and I don't know if they're really going to do what they're supposed to. But let's go back to home care.
Yeah.
Right. So we all went through the pandemic. We know what happened, but the uptick in telemedicine certainly went up. So now the question is, and we're seeing this more and more, how can these hospital networks work with us as home patients to get us the products we need? So for example, you go in, you have surgery. I can't dismiss you from the hospital until you have a hospital grade bed in your home.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm one of these networks, can I ship that to you in a timely fashion?
So.
One of the challenges today, which is interesting, back to change management, is a lot of these home care, not all, I don't mean to paint a broad brush, but some that I've talked to, it's interesting. They're like, I'll get there when it gets there. Like I work at the warehouse from 9 to 5. If it's 5 o'clock and there's still 15 orders to go, I'll get to it tomorrow. So it's not a retail mentality yet, but we're starting to see that shift. If you need a CPAP machine, you need replacements, right? Think about all those things that we use in our home or for medicine that now all of a sudden I can fulfill if I'm an Amazon. So if I'm a healthcare organization, I don't want to give that up to them.
Yeah.
So let me control that. I have the inventory. Let me control that. So I think we're seeing it start today where, I need crutches. All right, we'll get it to you within, not 2 days. We'll get it to you within 2 hours. Why? Because you got to walk around, right? Now let's creep into the hospital. And I think at the hospital, it's different because now it's like, bad analogy. Think of the hospital as a store, right? It's a physical location that we go in as a consumer or as a patient. So now what we're seeing, I think from the hospital networks is, hey, how do I fulfill? The old fashioned way was I fulfill, bring in pallets, break down pallets, fulfill. Now it's almost like, can I fulfill eaches? Right?
Yeah,
So
like patient on table even, right? Like just be able to have that logistics in place to be able to manage that.
So now when you think about this, the challenge for these hospital networks is now the pallets I have in my centralized location, I got to be able to pick from them. So maybe to break them down to not just boxes, but maybe down to eaches. And now I need to be able to have the mental or the change management to actually learn how to pick eaches, how to get them to the hospital in the right time. Because what we're seeing sometimes too is, well, maybe instead of you create a surgery tray, right? You need a certain amount of items, scalpels and all this on it. Well, do I have to do it in the hospital? Or what if I could break bulk and actually pick what I needed in the warehouse, assuming it doesn't have to be sterilized, or you sterilize the hospital, and then ship it directly to the operating room? Here's the tray for this surgery. Now you guys sterilize and it's good to go. Instead of let me ship these boxes into the storeroom of the hospital, then send someone down there to open the boxes, to look through. Now, put it away. Okay, we know that's not the first thing on their priority list. Let's go through boxes and literally pick stuff out, put it on a tray, bring it to the surgery room. So what if I could bring that back like we do in eCom to the fulfillment center, right? What if I could pick from there? And then the third one, which I think will take time because of all the regulations, is the pharmaceutical side. What if I could say, just go home and I'll deliver it to you, right? I'll pick, here's the bottle, use this pills, blah, blah, blah. I'll pick one of our customers. It's really interesting. They're working with a company called Zipline. There's two Ziplines, but this is the drone company.
They are doing like a big project in Ghana or, in Africa, right? They do the whole delivery thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The drone delivery thing that Amazon promised us like 12 years ago at this point, 2012, to be precise, right? Hasn't shown up. No. But what has happened, and you coming from Gartner, that hype cycle business, right? Where you have seen this quiet maturity of like true adoption of drone deliveries into like specifically in the medical space and specifically in like places like different countries in Africa where this outer reaches where it used to take 2 days to get medical delivery can now be done in an hour.
Yeah.
And Zipline's kind of leading the charge on that front, right?
And I think that's a great use case, right? Where Bezos promises we're going to deliver everything to you. But now it's like, no, but this is a real use case. And the use case for Zipline is great where they're like, a woman's giving birth and is losing blood and we need to get blood to her. We can't wait 2 days. It's got to be there within the hour.
Yeah.
Boom, Zipline. And what we're seeing here in the United States is that this customer of mine is rolling out Zipline because they're saying, well, wait a minute, I can deliver now your prescriptions. So I'll just use Zipline. Now, there's all kinds of ways to validate it's really you. I'm not just dropping it off.
Right.
There's all kinds of
all sorts of regulatory challenges.
You can't have drugs just show up on the front porch, right?
You can't have a drug flying around with drugs. Be like, hey, you want some?
You probably have FAA, CDC, DOD, everyone kind of like approvals.
but what's interesting is, to your point, is that they've gotten FAA approval. So they're going to start rolling this out from a fulfillment perspective. Now what it's doing is these healthcare organizations are going to have to start thinking more like a retailer. I'm going to have to do each as picking. I might have to do each as delivery. I might have to take orders and deliver it to you within a tight frame than just saying, it'll get to you when it gets to you. I think it's all a good thing, right? Because at the end of the day, we as patients, I always kind of semi-joke, the only two industries that all of us, regardless of what industry we're in, are impacted by are healthcare and retail.
Makes sense.
Right? Retail, regardless of if we shop a lot, we all go buy something at some point. And healthcare, guess what? We're all part of the healthcare. Like we go to doctors. And I think we're seeing from the fulfillment side, the two, back to the ground game discussion, is that, and I know drones is not the ground game, it's in the air, but it's a physical location to then bring your inventory. That is what I think we're going to see more and more. And to your point earlier, like we all know what a store looks like. We all know what a hospital looks like. Most of us don't know what the fulfillment of a lot of these goods look like, whether it's B2C or B2B. And I think that's where these industries need to think about that ground game, because I think the ground game is essential to meet our needs, our demands as patients and consumers moving forward.
Makes a whole ton of sense.
Awesome. Just real quick on the healthcare and the fulfillment. Are you, from your vantage point, are you seeing that these healthcare providers and these networks are trying to solve this problem themselves? Or how do you see the adoption to the 3PLs that specialize in healthcare?
I think we're seeing a little bit of both. I think we're seeing a lot of healthcare providers saying, let's us do it ourselves. We're going to have the truck fleet. We're going to have the DC space. We're going to have the labor to do picking. We're going to order directly from the suppliers, right? So we're not going to go through the Cardinal House. We're going to do it ourselves. I think we see that as a much more profitable and effective path. I think there's a lot to say that because they control a lot of their costs, they control a lot of their fulfillment. They're not beholden on a third party to say, oh, I need this. Well, you should have called us 2 hours ago because someone else already called and got it. So wait a week, right?
Makes sense.
So I think what it's doing, however, is it's opening up a can of worms, which we all know is, well, guess what? Fulfillment's hard.
Very hard.
The reason why the Cardinals of the world did well, because they take on that role.
They take on the pain, man.
They take all the pain.
Our hospitals really equipped to be operational organizations, and that's why they need 3PLs. There's a fundamental question to be asked over there.
Absolutely. And to your point, a lot of times what I've seen is sometimes it's, these fulfillment networks, they're managed by hospitals, they're managed by doctors. Doctors are way smarter than I am. But when it comes to fulfillment, I think
You've got an edge.
Things are changing. Things always take time to change. I think things are moving in the right direction. But again, we have a lot of very smart men and women that are doctors that are trying to do this fulfillment.
Absolutely.
It's a totally different world.
Makes complete sense.
So Guy, why don't you share with the audience where they could go to follow you on social media and where to go to learn more about Tecsys, which by the way is not spelled like the state of Texas. So
no, I appreciate that. And so for Tecsys, it's not the state, it's tecsys.com. Please follow, go to our website. A lot of great information on that. For me personally, you can follow me on Twitter. I don't call it whatever it's called now. I call it Twitter. It's just GCOURTIN is my Twitter handle, or of course on LinkedIn, just Guy, GUI, last name COURTIN. I look forward to people following me, and I try to post a lot of stuff and love conversations. And then just find me at shows like this. This has been fantastic. Love being on this.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
As we bring another episode to a close here at Modex, we want to extend our gratitude to GNP Construction for their sponsorship of the podcast. If you're in need of top-notch, all-inclusive material handling solutions for logistics and commercial real estate, look no further than GNP Construction. Be sure to visit GANDPconstruction.com to discover your one-stop shop for turnkey MHE integrations.
Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ, and I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference.